County Board of Commissioners to order. Please note all commissioners present. Stand.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approve the minutes of the following County Board of Commissioners meetings. Regular meeting held on August 20th, 2019.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Allen, supported by Commissioner Nordin. Questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next, proclamations, presentations, and awards. We have a certificate of appreciation for Francis E. Baldessari from the County of Marquette. This is to certify that Francis E. Baldessari is hereby awarded this certificate of appreciation for over 33 years outstanding service and contributions, and member and chairperson to the Marquette County Board of Canvassers on this third day of September 2019. Linda K. Talsma, Marquette County Clerk. Gerald O'Corkin, Chairperson, Marquette County Board of Commissioners. I'd like to recognize Fran, who I worked with for, I guess, 20 plus years as a teacher in Gwen. She was an excellent public school teacher and a very good person who I rode to work with for a long time.
Yes. Through rain and snow and everything. I think Jerry's been here as long as I have been going to Board of Canvassers meetings.
I would also like to say a huge thank you from me. Fran's worked under 4 different county clerks in her time, and she's done an awesome job.
Thank you, Linda.
See her go.
It's been one little way in order to keep involved, and I really appreciate the.
God bless you.
Thank you, Jerry. We had a lot of good years together. This is very, very nice. Thank you. And the cake was nice too.
Very well.
And I worked with great people all the time.
Could you hold up your plaque so the reporter can get your picture with it?
Sure.
And then over to Jerry too.
All set? Okay.
And I would like to say, Fran, it's truly a privilege working with you for many a campaign.
Yes.
Maybe even longer than 33 years.
Well, I think probably so.
But you were always willing to do anything that was asked of you, and always did an excellent job at everything that you tried to with. All those years we worked together, you were always there.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. I enjoyed that a lot too. I have to say that I was at a gathering on Saturday, and a cousin of mine from Milwaukee said, "Are you going to the Democratic Convention next year?" I said, "I don't think so, Peggy." I said, maybe many years ago I might have enjoyed a big crowd like that, but not anymore. I helped to man the booth at the fair, give some money, and that's about the extent of it now. We get a little old for active campaigning.
And you were faithful at working the bingo game every week
yes.
for 6 years too.
Yes.
A labor of love.
Okay, that's a little bit more history. Thanks for remembering. I'm not going to stay for the whole meeting. I've been gone all day. And I have to go back to Gwyn.
Thank you for all your good work for
Thank
Marquette County.
you. Thank you, Jerry. And thank you to the board. I really appreciate
it. Next, approval of the agenda.
Approve the agenda as presented.
Moved by Mr. DePietro, support.
Support.
Commissioner Adamini. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public comment, anyone wishing to address the board, please come forward, state your name and address, and you can speak.
Good evening, Commissioners. Matt Weezy, the Marquette County Prosecuting Attorney. I want to give you another update on where things are at. From January 1 to August 31 of this year, we've had authorized 435 felony cases, and we've authorized 746 misdemeanor cases. So at that projected rate, that looks like about 653 felony cases in 2019 and approximately 1,120 misdemeanor cases. For the month of August, we had 110 criminal cases charged. 42 were felony, and the remainders were misdemeanor. We had 31 drug cases charged, 14 of them involving methamphetamine, which they're all felonies, the methamphetamine cases. 33 operating while intoxicated cases, 6 were felonies, and felony operating while intoxicated means a third or more habitual or an accident causing serious injury. 29 police officer resisting and obstructing cases were authorized. We had 28 domestic violence cases in the month of August. 10 were felony, a couple of very severe felony strangulation. One was assault with intent to commit murder. We had 9 assaultive crimes, 3 were felony, and we had 3 criminal sexual assault cases authorized. That's just in the month of August. For the year, we had, I'll give you the highlights, we had 263 drug felony cases. 145 of those involved methamphetamine from January to August. And then we had 130 domestic violence cases from January to August, and 39 of those were felony domestic violence cases, which means usually a strangulation or habitual offender. Commissioner Adamini, you'd asked me last month about other stats that I could pull up. I did ask my office manager to go into the prosecutor's adult case tracking system today, and she was able to run a report that I wasn't able to get together to hand out, but just to give you an idea, we had 1,601 cases entered into our system this year, and of those cases, there were 562 felonies entered and 1,029 misdemeanors entered. So that, obviously all those cases weren't authorized, but those are just cases that came in. With regard to district court events, which are misdemeanors or civil infractions for my office, we had 5,961 events scheduled. Now, of course, we didn't attend every event because some get canceled, but we did have 465 pretrial conferences, which we did staff those, and we had over 400 preliminary examinations scheduled, and we staffed every one of those. We also had, of those preliminary examinations, 253 of them were held, which means those were court hearings where we had to present evidence with witnesses and there was counsel on the other side. In circuit court, we had 2,492 events scheduled, and those we do have to attend every time. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. On a felony case, you got to be there. And of that, we had 213 pretrial conferences. So those are events that take typically 15 minutes to a half hour, which are staffed with attorneys and the judge. So we do all that with basically the equivalent of 5.5 full-time equivalent criminal prosecutors. That doesn't include that we do our own appellate work, that we handle all the civil infractions, we do Secretary of State cases, and that doesn't include all the screening that we do. Of all the cases that we did screen this year, 170 cases were denied. So we look at our job as a gatekeeper to make sure that cases that shouldn't be charged don't get charged. Or if the police make a wrong call on a case, it's our job to first say, you got this wrong. And we do that, and we did that 170 times this year. So of all the cases that came to us, we denied 12% of them. We see it as our job to make sure that only good quality cases that can be proven and the Constitution was followed get put into the system. So I wanted to give you that update. I will put this into a report that includes the other data that I mentioned, and I'll make sure that it gets distributed to all of you, and I just wanted to thank you for your time.
On behalf of the board, I'd like to congratulate you. I guess you're the head of the State Prosecutors Association for the next year. Congratulations.
Thank you, Commissioner. I was elected to president-elect, which means that I automatically get elected president next year. So they don't have an election next year. So assuming the proverbial bus doesn't take me out someday, I'll become the president next year.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Public comment?
Dan Willie, the undersheriff. For August, our search and rescue and 131 units, we went out a couple of times for lost hikers on Hogsback Mountain. We helped with an injured hiker at the Alqual Park in Ishpeming. We had 3 rescues for injuries during the Order Shore race. Some of the public safety classes and events that we participated in is we went out for the Veterans Day Fishing Derby, a couple of national nights out. Some of the other training we had for 131 is we had high angle rope rescue. We had 131 station equipment review and maintenance, and then participated in the Marquette County firefighters meeting. And the calls for assistance for 131 were a personally injured accident in Negaunee City, 1 in Humboldt Township, 1 in structure fire in Forsyth, and I guess that's it. So road patrol, 258 calls for service for August. We policed 29 accidents. We wrote 175 citations. We had made 4 OUID or OWIs or OUID arrests. We had 7 drug cases, 6 of which involved methamphetamine, 9 retail frauds or larcenies, 4 assaults. Civil papers, we took in 310 and we served 255. For the jail, in August we booked 200 people in, 145 males and 55 females. We released 204. The average daily population at the main jail was 91. The highest, we had 104 people in the main jail on August 22nd, and the lowest was we had 82 people at the main jail on August 14th. And we averaged between 8 and 9 federal prisoners per day. As of the 21st, the last month, we no longer have anybody lodged at Alger. And we had 1 inmate versus inmate no assaults on staff. And we did get notification that we're receiving a RAP grant from MMRA for body cameras for $16,574. That's it.
Just a quick follow-up on, how has the body scanner been working? Are we, was it prevented? Have we caught anybody bringing?
It's working. We everybody that comes to jail, we scan. We have found a couple of things on people, so it's been working. And what it's done too is that now that people know that they have the scanner, they'll give up the drugs before they try to bring them into the jail. So it's a good deterrent.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thanks. Public comment?
Is this where I'm?
You're underprivileged.
You're not yet, no.
Not yet. Okay.
Hang on.
Other
You're getting there, though.
public comment? Any other public comment? Review of claims?
Oh, we have one more.
Hi, I'm Dan Rademacher. I live at 152 Anderson Road in Scandia, Michigan. Just coming here with some questions and concerns. The County Road Commission, approximately on July 24th, came down and said they were extending Anderson Road. I am in the extreme northeast corner of my property, and the pavement ends right by my house. And there hasn't been a road there, you know, from doing my research in like 100 years. And looking at the road, I didn't get any notice of it. There's a survey marker back where right around where they stopped the road, and that road is on my property. It goes onto my property and then comes back to the survey marker in the middle of the section. the section marker where the road should be. It does not appear that the road commission surveyed where this road should be. In researching the property that I own, there was an easement in 1925-26 for the private landowner and a private logging company, which the county is going under, the road commission said that they were just extending the road. This road, it isn't on the section marker. The remaining, what you can tell of Anderson Road, is right on the section marker and runs straight south. This runs all my property. I asked them why they were putting it in. They said somebody complained and wanted the road put in. Spoke with the township supervisor, Art Loren, and he said last year he was told some people wanted a road put in. The Roses in southern Scandia, that the county road commission wasn't in the road building business, and if they did, the people would have to pay for it and bring it up to the quality to be paved. That was never done because they didn't want to bring it up to that standard. I was wondering why they would not. The survey marker is obvious. The road goes onto my property and comes back to the left, and there is multiple survey markers that's been made in recent time. Why would they wouldn't do their due diligence and survey the marker if they want the road put in, put it back on the section line where it should be? To the best of my knowledge, that was nothing more than an old skidder trail. There was no road. I don't think that any of us were old enough to see it if it was there. So it's just a concern. I just didn't, if the county's getting in to the road building business, I don't know what the precedent is on this. They just said, when I asked, I did contact the county commission, road commission, they just said they were extending the road. It goes nowhere. It's a swamp. It goes back almost exactly a quarter mile to the end of my property, and they gravelled it. I don't know that they replaced the culvert. I know there's chunks of metal where part of the culvert was ripped out. I don't know if they pulled DEQ permits for all this. Looks to me like they just came in and ripped it up, and it's all on my property without, the county road, from my research, the county doesn't own the property. It would be on the center line of the section. So, I just was wondering about that, or what. I just wanted some answers, so, yeah.
If I may, I'm one of the county commissioners that's on the liaisons for the road commission. So I'd like to get your information if we can.
Sure.
Before you leave.
Okay.
We'll do a little follow-up on your concerns and.
Okay.
Did they ever tell you what was the purpose of putting the road back in?
The best answer I got was from out in the field. They said somebody complained. There's a piece of property back there that they didn't have good access to their property, and so we were told to put a road in. And it only goes back a quarter mile, because you go beyond that, you're going to be in the wetlands. There's ponds back there. You're not Anderson Road. You could put it through, but there'll be no reason being, because Dalton Road's a quarter mile over, and there it goes around there. They did it because somebody made a complaint to get better access to their property, but I'm saying the road is on my property and it should be on the center line.
So your concern would be a trespass, and again,
they
I don't want to take your public comment time.
No, they knock the trees down. If it's all on my property, they knock my trees down, build a road on it, and if you go by the center line of the section, they're like a road and a half off. It ain't like I'm 4 feet off. You can see the road goes way over here and then comes back, and there's the center, the survey pins. And my understanding is that the road should be on a section line, center line, on the easement. So.
Mr. Adamini is pretty good at land issues.
I'm sure. I don't know.
No, all I'm saying is, that's a common myth that roads should be on the section line. But I'm not saying you're wrong or anything. One, we have no jurisdiction over this.
Yeah.
The County Road Commission has their own board. Their rights of way are under their jurisdiction, not ours. But
It was quite evident, I didn't want to go there first, because the answer I was getting was we just extended the road, the remaining part of the road runs right on the center line, so I'm not sure.
And in the 49 years I've been practicing law, I've tried more than one of these cases.
Right.
Sometimes the road commission's been wrong, sometimes the landowner's been wrong, sometimes you get together and you work out something, so.
Right.
But I think you're getting good advice here from.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
Meet with Commissioner DeRocha, he's our last on it,
Okay.
road commission, and he'll follow up on it, guarantee you that.
okay,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
But they're the ones that would
Right.
be responsible if they've made a mistake, or explaining it to you, or coming to some agreement with you on what has
Right.
been done, or what should have been done, and correcting it if anything
Sure.
wrong was done, et cetera, is with them.
Okay, very well, thank you.
So, before you run away,
Okay, yeah, I can give you my information.
Yeah, oh, give me a second.
Yeah.
we got a public comment. Claims and accounts total experience, expenditures August 16th through August 29th, $549,468.80. Biweekly payable for the period of August 24th, $675,483.99. Your pleasure.
Support.
Motion to pay the bills. Questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearings, privilege comment, Dr. George Janowski, medical examiner, welcome.
Okay, I want to thank you, Mr. Corcoran, for inviting me to speak here. Thank you to the Commission for appointing me as Chief Medical Examiner. I've been Chief Medical Examiner for about, I think, 3 years now, and prior to that, Deputy Medical Examiner for about 17 years here in Marquette County. Prior to that, I was Chief Medical Examiner in Emmett County before I moved here. You had asked to have an update on the medical examiner's office, and I think there's a handout that was passed around, gives a brief outline. I'm going to, over the next couple months, flesh this out so that it has a little more detail. What I've listed is the last 3 years, some basic data about what the medical examiner's office does. In 2017, we handled 84 total cases of that either involved an autopsy or external examination. That was 94 in 2018, and we're on track to have about 102 this year because we've had 68 so far in the first 8 months. Of those, the next column, we have, as medical examiners, we are charged with determining the cause and manner of death. And the manner of death, we only have 5 choices: natural, accident, homicide, suicide, indeterminate, and on 4 out of those 5 we work with Mr. Reese and Under Sheriff Willie. We've worked together for many years on these cases. The state has an interest in determining whether deaths are natural or something other than natural. If the treating physician determines it's natural, it may or usually does not come to the medical examiner's attention. We're charged specifically with sudden and unexpected deaths, suspicious deaths, all motor vehicles, and that's anything that's got a motor in it, whether it's a snowmobile or an ATV or motorized electric. It's not mentioned specifically, but by the way it's worded, I'm sure a hovercraft would probably be covered as a motorized vehicle. child and elder abuse, and all SIDS deaths. So we are required since the 1950s in the medical examiner statutes to investigate those. That doesn't mean we're going to do an autopsy. It means we're charged with investigating. Under the accidents, 31% of the cases that we investigated in 17, you can see it's about 25 to 35% of the cases were accidents. And below, I've given a breakdown of what kind of accidents we have. Automobile, it says PD, that's passenger or driver. So actually we had more passenger deaths than driver deaths over the last 2 years and 8 months. MC is motorcycle, so we have quite a few motorcycle deaths. They're dangerous. And ATV deaths as well. Pedestrians is PED is pedestrians, 2 pedestrians, not very many of those, fortunately. And not very many drownings. For a community that's on a lakefront, we don't have very many drownings. And some of our drownings occur in places, in pools and other places as well, not just in Lake Superior or the inland lakes. Overdoses, big number there, 18 overdoses in the last 2 years and 8 months, and that's a concern to everybody. We certainly hear about that a lot in the news. Homicides, fortunately, not very many things in that column, and one of those in the year 2018 was recorded in 2018. The death actually occurred in 1979. That was kind of a cold case, but that was interesting. So that's something I'll maybe mention that a little bit later. Suicides, we do have a lot of suicides, mostly with gunshot GSW, gunshot wounds, so 60% of our suicides involve guns, and almost most of the rest of them involve hangings. So about it. The indeterminates are problematic. Nobody in our office likes to sign something as indeterminate, but sometimes we just can't tell if something is not recognizable or decomposed, or just circumstances don't clearly fit in any of the categories. Now, as I'm employed through Medical Labs of Marquette, our corporation provides the services as medical examiner. We also provide pathology services for a number of communities around the Upper Peninsula. So we also do another. In addition to the 84 autopsies we did for Marquette County, we did 47 autopsies for surrounding counties in 2017 and 41 in 2018. So far this year, 24 for other counties in the surrounding area. Since 2017, we've had a very very new program over in Northern, the Forensic Research Outdoor Station. I'm sure you're all aware of it. That they've set up. Some people refer to as a body farm. It's a lot more than that. The FROST program is a forensic anthropologist, Dr. Jane Wankmiller, who's we've had a very excellent collaboration with on recent cases, as well as some older cases of things that have been sitting around, bones that have been sitting around in police stations for sometimes for decades that were cold cases. So no, it's been an excellent collaboration with Dr. Wankmiller. But one of the things that she does, is out there at the prison is the investigation of what they call body farm, but is a investigation of how bodies change over time in exposure. There's not a good body of research in areas this cold. There's places in Texas, places in lower Michigan, Colorado, that have involved in this, and she has to deal with donations. And one of the questions that prompted you to invite me here was a letter that came from Dory Dills, who's the new director of Gift of Life here in Michigan, and she forwarded a letter to you and to me as well regarding issues of donation. We have in this area kind of a split donation. The organ donations all go to Wisconsin because they're a lot closer logistically, and they've always gone there, whereas the tissue, the skin and bone donations go to Lower Michigan and to Gift of Life, and that's been kind of a we have not, they worked that out decades ago as how the donations will be most efficaciously handled. And Ms. Stills, in her new role as Director of Gift of Life, was unfamiliar with many of the aspects of rural Michigan and many of the aspects of how different medical examiners' offices are organized. In Lower Michigan, most of the medical examiners' offices are civil servants. They work directly for the county. They are employees of the county directly. That's not the way it is in most of the rest of the state. In most of the state, the medical examiners are, like we are, volunteers. And the work I do as chief medical examiner is unpaid. What I and my colleagues get paid for are actually doing the autopsies. And that would happen whether we did the medical examiner's office or not. And in some counties, the medical examiner office by statute falls to the county health officer. For example, Jim Terrian, who's the medical examiner for Luce County, is the health officer for Luce County. And so that there's a very set program as to how the medical examiner duties are to be handled in state statute. So regarding the letter that I think you read, and it mentioned several things. One, it mentioned that there was a contract between Gift of Life and the medical examiner's office, or the county, and that was something I was unfamiliar with. I'd never heard of that contract, but it obligated the medical examiner, so it was kind of there was an oversight, one of those things that got filed away and we were unaware of. The other thing is that we actually do a really good job of referring things there, but it doesn't necessarily always show. We have a very high referral rate for the organ donations. The problem, because we are so far away from Gift of Life, which is located in Ann Arbor, the logistics sometimes are just insurmountable. The time and logistics of transferring a donor from the Upper Peninsula down to Ann Arbor so that the donation of skin and bone can be done down there. At times they've been done up here, and I have the letter that you received. I and many of my colleagues took exception with, and I was not alone. I found out some people were even angrier than I was about that letter. So I have a letter here from Stephanie Summers, who's the medical examiner and funeral home liaison, about that, and the response was so uniformly negative to that letter that Ms. Stills was, as director of Gift of Life, was required to do a statewide apology tour. And I did meet with her and Stephanie Summers in July, on July 17th, and had a very, very productive and useful discussion on how we can all move forward and promote in our shared goal of promoting organ donation and tissue donation, because there's many people that can benefit from it, as well as many people who wish to make donations. Like I say, the Frost program depends on donations. Tissue and eye donations are critical to people's health, their vision, and organ donations. So we've recently in the news with the issues about how many kidney donations go to waste in the United States because of the criteria and concerns. There was a recent article in the Journal of the American Medical Association regarding loss of kidneys. So we're all very aware of it. We're very concerned about it, and like I say, some of the concerns that Ms. Dills addressed in that letter were probably not worded as diplomatically as they should have. She got an undiplomatic response.
Is it doable in the UP?
Well, one of the many things that I can read to you, one of the things that we discussed was they're evaluating the feasibility of hiring recovery staff dedicated to the Upper Peninsula and Northern Michigan. And obviously that's a big financial burden, but so is transporting transporting a donor from here. And we've done it. I mean, we've arranged for either funeral homes or others to transport a body down to Ann Arbor so that the recovery, but families don't want to have long delays for obvious reasons, and the cost of that transport is quite high. It's a lot of miles, so and it has to be done rapidly. So they are exploring that. I have not heard back on that. But they are looking at hiring recovery staff dedicated to the UP and Northern Michigan to improve logistics and better serve our UP partners and families. So they're looking into ways that we can improve it. One of the problems that they had was they didn't understand that we don't get all the referrals. Many of the referrals they were looking for are going to have to come by necessity from EMS and from the emergency room and hospital staff, and not from the medical examiner cases, because they never come to us. We never see them. It's a different route that's going to have to take in order to get the referrals that they're seeking. So, but we're ready to facilitate. We already work closely with them. We take phone calls from them at all hours of the day and night on organ and tissue donations. So. That's one of the things we do. We're on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So,
other questions from commissioners? Thank you for coming in.
All right.
And elaborating on it, because we had a couple of letters on it. And
yes.
Thank you for your explanation, and so we better understand the issues.
All righty. I would like to see that the contract, because I've never seen that. So that's the only question I have for you, is whoever has that.
I'll tell you, we searched for that after receiving that letter ourselves, so we still haven't come up with that.
Okay. Well, maybe I can probably get it from Ms. Dills. Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right.
We're looking for it as soon as we got that.
Yeah. It was probably something that was handled years ago and got misfiled or at least forgotten. I'm not surprised, but these things, they don't have a good spot to file them. So, and it may have been filed in something that Dr. Weiss or Dr. Smith had, or my predecessors, and is no longer around. And a lot of things went through the shredder with the move too. So.
Thank you for your presentation. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you for the invite to speak. Appreciate it.
Next, we have the informational items. Notice of hearing with the customers, UP Michigan Energy Resource Corporation, electric gas customers of Upper Michigan Resource, electric customers of WNI Electrical Power Company, notice of hearing gas customers, Semco Energy, and MEDQ Air Quality pending permit installation application report. A motion to accept for file and accept comment.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Nordine.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Adamini. Any comments on any of them? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Action items, pole barn lease, City of Ishpeming. Scott?
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. As you've been made aware of, the lease ends on September 23rd for Search and Rescue and 131 at the State Police Post. The Sheriff's Department has been out looking for an alternative storage space for the facility. It's been very difficult to come up with something both short-term and long-term. However, in the meantime, the City of Ishpeming is gracious enough to allow us to potentially lease up to 80% of the 3,600 square foot pole barn that they own. So we have here some terms for you that I can go over. But before I do that, though, I want to say we've also been exploring the potential to construct a pole barn that we would own, not have to lease from anyone. That process is still underway. I do not have a number, however, I have some suggestions that maybe we go out for a quick turnaround RFQ or RFP on a pole barn, because we think that we may have adequate resources within the reserves for both 131 and search and rescue that would still allow to have some money available with the construction of a pole barn. So, but given that that would not be necessarily completed until maybe end of 1st of November to get it even rocked in, we still may need something short term. So what I'm asking for tonight is consideration with the terms below, after myself and Member Sheriff Willie had conversations with the interim acting city manager at Ishmael. So what we would do is propose a 1-year lease with a 60-day notice of termination by either party. Once the lease is signed, any extension would be based on mutually agreeable terms. County to lease 80%, which would be about 2,880 square feet. If the county would continue into the winter months, we would provide a leasehold improvement in the form of a larger propane heater, because the one they have in there really wouldn't be adequate to keep it warm enough over the time that we would need for the equipment we have. That would stay in place assuming we did install that, and that's about a $7,000 cost to install. We would pay $800 a month lease rent, and we would still pay electric and the propane for that. The city of Ishmael would try to plow and keep the site open. However, there may be times that the priority would be on the street, so we understand that. However, if there was an actual call out, they would indicate Public Works would call and would probably send somebody over quickly if we need to get it up. So what I'm recommending is authorizing the opportunity to go forward with this. However, understanding that we wouldn't necessarily sign anything at this point, because we think we may be able to do a quick turnaround on a bid for a building to see what those terms come in at. So we would like to think by your meeting on September 17th, we may be able to have you a pole barn, say like a 50 by 100 foot, half heated, half cold storage at that time. So I'd authorize approval to enter into the facility to do it.
Lease is in case we don't get the pole barn constructed before winter, I guess. Bill?
Where's the pole barn located at?
I'm going to defer to Willie on that, because I've actually not seen it.
Well, the reason I ask is it's propane instead of natural gas, so it's somewhere out in the outskirts somewhere.
It's in the city, but it's off by the it's the old recycling center off of Lakeshore Drive. And
The wastewater plant?
down that road, yes.
Yeah. Say it again.
The reason, and I guess because, and you said it, that you needed a new heater, and they obviously aren't heating this in the winter, and I'll tell you, I used to be in the propane business, and I'll tell you, if heating pole barns is a tricky business, and it can end up costing you so much that the rent seems like nothing compared to what it's going to cost you to heat the thing. So you got to be careful of that. Did they tell you at all what they paid to heat it in the past, or how long they heated it, or anything?
They have a small, I think, Molinar type heater in there right now.
Modine type thing?
Modine, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's not adequate for the long-term Modine.
And if you put you said you were talking about putting a $7,000 heater in there, would that come off of the rent then?
No, that's in addition. So what we worked out a rent that's, I think ends up with the cost of the heater and everything is about $16,000. I have to do my calculations. It would be about $60,000 for the year, which is less than what we're paying, not including the extra cost for propane. But again, we're looking for a longer-term solution, and we think we may be able to fit something in that we can come back to the board within the dollars that we have available to construct. That's the hope at this time. I don't want to mislead you until you have all the facts until the bid's coming, but everything's leaning towards that today.
A couple of things that I guess maybe I want to, if Under Sheriff could. First off, relocating the 131 unit, even if it's a short period of time, how are the volunteers going to accept relocating would be my first question. Dan, do you have any feel for what's
I think they're good with it. We don't have a choice. We're getting kicked out of the state police post because of the structural damage on one of the cold storage buildings that they have, so they're taking us out of the heated building, and they're going to use the whole building, so we have to go.
What is the absolute deadline that we have to be out of there?
We were told September 23rd.
Is there any room for an additional 30 days, or is that up? And not to,
We can always ask, Commissioner, there's
Okay.
no question about that. We can ask, they've given us formal notice in writing for the agreement that we have.
and I know, per discussion earlier, we've talked about how we could redo something on county property in that same location, because we do not want to disrupt the individuals that volunteer their time, the paramedics on 131. I think that's critical.
We need a solution, and we're getting kicked out. We need something in the interim, so hopefully we get the building built before winter.
Right, and the only other thing that was a little alarming was, if they plow. It can't be if they plow for an emergency vehicle. If you have to have more money to plow it out, make it be more money, but that has to be accessible, storm or no storm.
We could work on a separate contract.
You know where I'm going with that.
I mean, we can do that separately.
Right,
This
right.
makes sense to give administrative authorization, so we have a place to go here for up to a year if we need it, and entertain a motion.
I would make the motion to approve the recommendation as presented.
60-day term.
Did anyone check with, is 131 in support of this? I guess it's Ned, right, that runs
Yeah,
131?
the feedback that we got is, we had talked about maybe moving down to K.I. Sawyer, but most of the,
I got the same thing Commissioner Grosha got, because Ned came to me right away and said, wait a second, we all live in Negaunee.
right,
I get it.
so I think they're okay with the location, because it's, it's just a couple miles away.
And the other question I'd ask, Scott, of you is that, I'd suggested checking with the DNR, because they got a great building that's 80% empty sitting in West Ishpeming.
We
That they
checked with it, and it's not available. They said it's, they told us it's being used.
How long will it take to build
Read
both
it.
cars once we get it
Well,
all
if
ready?
you gave, I might defer, I think that you could have it closed in, if you gave the bids before the end of this month, authorization from one contractor potentially by November. Not necessarily even.
And I think we have to put out, be a little, the other thing is where's our planning on this when it comes to the county planner? Did we have something in place? But we have a short span of time to fix this. I'd like to see some bid go out, some RFP go out,
And they could throw those buildings up pretty quick, those pole barns, but I'll tell you what, you don't like to do is get into November and the weather gets bad and you end up with all kinds of problems unnecessarily. You're really backing into a bad time of year to be starting this.
It's going to be a real quick turnover on
We would be lucky if Indian summer or Christmas.
Maybe.
you know something we don't know?
We have a motion and a support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next, FAA agreement, grant, which we're not ready to take action on tonight, but I guess Scott and Dwayne want to talk about it to the board?
Yes, please, thank you, and bear with me through this process. As the chairman, I'm going to probably talk a lot, and might get too confusing, and stop me, redirect me, and please Sue can also help weigh in as well. We have Steve here too, to kind of go through this. I'm not asking for action tonight, given this, but we will be recommending consideration for a special meeting coming up in either the 9th or 10th, because we have to have a response back to the FAA if the board goes forward with this grant, not later than September 11th. We got a day extension, we try to get a little more time. If you might recall, one of the things that the airport's been working on is trying to get back into the military airport program called MAP. The purpose of that was to try to extend two hangars, which are currently occupied by American Eagle, those being hangar 665 and 664. The purpose of that was to accommodate what we see as larger aircraft that are coming down the road for American Eagle to construct or repair, I should say. The current hangars, only 664 can allow one larger plane in there with a tail height that exceeds 28 feet.
I believe so, I'm
Is the
not
current
100%.
limitations on hangar 664. The new aircraft exceed that tail height, so therefore they cannot fit into hangar 665. They can put one large one in hangar 664, but that limits what the maintenance, repair, and overhaul component of an Envoy can do out at Sawyer. So with that, Dwayne pursued this grant offered the Military Airport Program grant. We were in that program many years ago, timed out of it due to the project we had. In essence, we got the nod to get back in. However, we never knew when the money was going to come and at what level those dollars would come before us. Dwayne received a correspondence or call a week or two ago from the FAA and said, oh, by the way, we're going to move forward with the 2018 grant and you need to have that response back to us by the 10th was the first time, now it's the 11th. So Dwayne came to us, Sue and I, and the question Sue and I had, which we think are going to be similar to what the board had and maybe more from the board was, the first grant is fine, you have before you leave Consilient. However, you have to understand that by committing to this project, initially, we're asking for over a $20 million grant project. You're in. Once you're in, you're in. If you go forward and you back out, you may end up having to reimburse the FAA its money. So there's some risk to this. So even if you got into this first phase, which commits $61,000 from the county, about $64,000, give or take a little bit from the state, $1 million from the federal government, and we backed out because we found out that we just can't make the rest of the project work. You could conceivably, not you as a board, the county could conceivably be on the hook for the $1 million that may have been spent already. So with that in mind, we started looking into what kind of assurances or commitments might we get from the state, because we just went through this with the board at your last meeting with that sweeper truck. We heard loud and clear that, with the FAA had changed the rules a little bit on the project. Now, what kind of assurances do we have going forward? And we figured the board would have the same types of questions about where's the federal government at. We do not have, at this point, a solidified commitment from the state to pay their component of it going forward. And so I'm going to give you some background, and I'm going to give you some more. So these were concerns that we had as of last week, trying to say, how do we make this project work and bring to the board something today even that you might be ready to commit to, and that we can stand by from a financial side and say, it's okay, here's what it is. So we've done lots of work reaching out to try to have meetings lined up with the state to get those assurances. Prior to this, I will say, in addition to Dwayne, I've also reached out to MDOT at one time that I had. I've also reached out to our local state reps to say we're going to need to have some help to pull the trigger to get the assurances that the state will do this, because at this point, even as of, unless you learn something today,
Nothing
they are
new.
not committed to say beyond this first grant of $60,000+ that they're in. So that's obviously a concern. So one is the full project is about $24 to $25 million if we do both hangars. So what we've also asked, could we just go forward with what you see before is just on hangar 665? Could we go forward and commit the county just to hangar 665? But again, if you're in, you're in. And that project total is $13,797, not a $25 million project. So yes, we could start with this hangar 665, but again, we still don't have some of those assurances from the state. So,
Just one other one, I guess, to throw in there, it seems like if this project you're talking about, Envoy was going to be the beneficiary of this. How about them? Where have they been in the discussions here? You're talking about this kind of money to be a partner in all this.
We do have scheduled conversation with the director of Envoy, hoping to be able to have those discussions tomorrow, just to lead into possibly seeing what Envoy or American Airlines would be willing to participate in this. It's challenging with them. Airlines consistently have played the role of we provide service, you provide facilities. As we may see in the past years that Envoy has been at Sawyer, their financial input to the airport in revenue generated through their lease is minimal, but what they see is the value to the community is the fact that they are providing that second line of transportation with a legacy carrier. So it's challenging with that, not that it's not an opportunity or an option that they may participate, because as the administrator had indicated, Envoy is looking to expand their maintenance into larger aircraft. They already have upwards of, if I'm correct, 67 of the larger ERJ 175 aircraft. That is a 76-seat aircraft, which will not fit in 665, but only one would fit in 664. And as they transition into those larger aircraft, the smaller 50 seats that were currently being worked on at the base are going to get cycled out, and as soon as that particular fleet is out of their system, if we don't have facilities that would accommodate the larger aircraft, a wise business decision on their part would be to say, well, we no longer can function out of Marquette. And our concerns with that is if they were to discontinue their maintenance at the airfield, there is a very good likelihood that they would also discontinue the air carrier service that we're currently provided through.
I just have a couple of quick questions. What's the price per square foot that we're collecting for 665, 664? Makes no difference. Just a rough.
Can I weigh in? And I have some more to give the board too, that more detail on this project, but they pay $60,000 a year for lease, which the last time I added up the total amount, it's under 50 cents a square.
50 cents a square foot.
I don't hold you that specific number. I think
Okay.
It's either under 60 or under 50.
Well, I guess, and this is the same, and I'm not recalling too terribly long ago, we were sitting here and we spent $995,000, I think, to put insulation on the roof that didn't need to be insulated.
That was to repair the fire barrier on the insulation within the hangars.
Right, but we spent $1 million. Okay. And at the time, it was to make sure that they stay in place because they provide the jobs, and I get that. And I struggled with this question before at $50 or 50 cents a square foot. I mean, how do we justify continuing to? I mean, at some point, I think the chairman alluded to what portion does the business that's going to collect revenue play a part in this? Because there's no building anywhere in Marquette County or anywhere in the state that's getting 50 cents a square foot for what they have out there.
If I might weigh in, there's excellent points, and we're here to hear, because we want to get the feedback from commissioners, so I don't want to get too much into the history, but the chairman can actually, another maybe, Bill even, if you might recall, the reason that the memorandum of understanding, I think, is for 25 years, that was established at that time with Ramsey, and I think they evolved to American Eagle, and they become Envoy. And that was all done under the same time that the KSO Air Force Base was closing, and they were in need of larger space to expand or continue their maintenance operation here. So the board entered into a deal at that time which would allow them to come out to Sawyer and to retain 150 jobs at that time. So hence the deal that you have in front of you. So, but they've taken up more space out there, so each time they
do we still have 150 people working out there?
More than that.
Okay.
You have over 200.
There's a lot.
There's over 200. So if the commissioner could bear with just a couple more comments before on what your exposure is and what we're looking at doing, is that okay? Yes. Steve was going to.
I have something too, so we all do.
But let me go a couple more points. Go ahead. I think there's a lot here. I talked about going only on Hangar 665 as the project. That's what we feel we could commit to, not we commit, but that's what, if you go forward, that's what you'd be committing to, not necessarily to the other one with Hangar 664. your risk of exposure, if the state of Michigan does not pay beyond the 64,000 or so that's there, to complete the hangar project as we understand those costs today, is approximately $1.57 or $1.6 million. That would be our share and the state's component of it if they didn't pay anything else. Additionally, we feel that a portion or a proportion of this project is also eligible for passenger facility charges, and Dwayne has tried to have those conversations at different times with the FAA to get that narrowed down. It's continuing to pursue that as well to try and say how much of our portion is eligible for passenger facility charges as well. So first off, worst case scenario, $13 million project, basically $14 million, go forward. If the state doesn't pay anything beyond the 60-some thousand that they say is in the budget right now for this first phase, is $1.57 million. On top of that, the other risk of this is cash that comes out of the county's pocket is, if you may or may not recall, is the way this federal government has changed and the state have changed how dollars have to be allocated to aviation projects. Another component of this is the county would also have to front about just under $1.2 million, which is the 10% component that we have to pay into these projects. It's guaranteed as we go forward. You will get that money back, the $1.2 million. We'll come back to you. It's a matter of time. You're guessing anywhere between 3 to 5 years those dollars could come back to you. Those would come back. So going forward with this project, and I said we're just talking about it tonight. We're asking for consideration for a special meeting early next week to just come back to you and say where we landed on some of these discussions and we as staff are having beyond this. Your exposure as dollars go right up in the front of this, assuming no other help from whether it be Envoy, the state, the passenger facility charges, or other dollars that we're able to come up with, is 2.7. Of that 2.7, you get just under 1.2 back to you that you'd have to front, but that would come back over in time. So your real exposure is about $1.5 million, 1.6 around it. So that's the short version of it that we have right now. We wanted to.
You said that we got into this first phase, we'd have up to buying in for $13 million.
You're, in theory, by what, and I hope I said this, and Dwayne stepped in if I say it incorrectly. By getting into the project, if you agree to go forward with the first phase with the grant that you have in front of you, this is what the money, that all that's been allocated to this point is the federal government is going to come up and pay just about $1.1 million to do these engineering projects, these first two engineering phases for Hangar 665. But by doing so, you're in essence committing to move forward with Hangar 665 project, which is a $13.79 million project. Your risk as a part of this is 2.7, 1.2 of that, as best we come up with the numbers, will come back to you. So you're really at risk for about 1.6, assuming no state involvement beyond the 60+ thousand they put in, no PSC money. So that's what we have before you today. So you're agreeing to it because what I mentioned in the beginning, which I said I'm saying a lot today. If you back out, if we go forward and agree to it and the federal government pays the $1,099,000 for engineering, we contribute our money, and we decide we cannot afford to go forward or cannot do the next phase of this Hangar 665 project, they, being the federal government, may come back and say, you owe us $1,099,000.
I'd like to see a spreadsheet with the numbers on it, just so we can see exactly what we are responsible for, because everything that I've listened for quite a while tonight, to put it all in, makes no financial sense to me.
And why?
If the county is going to be stuck with all the risk of this for, this kind of development, makes no financial sense whatsoever.
Is this a worst case scenario we're hearing tonight?
As we understand it today, yes. And that's why, for the chairman's point, we would have, this has all been, we were working on these things late this afternoon, trying to revise things and move this forward to something we could discuss tonight in front of the board to raise these same kind of comments and questions. Because we would normally have spreadsheets to lay this out, we would have that. Those are things that we need to know and your concerns.
So you're not actually asking what you've got down here in your memo staff recommendation, this is kind of a...
We're skipping that tonight.
Yeah, okay, so we're just going into getting other information and maybe a special meeting. I'd like to ask Dwayne, how long has this been in the two of this, the planning this map thing and this?
I originally applied for this, a map application back in 2017, where we applied for a much larger scale than this. We were denied that initial map application. We had meetings with the head of the ADO in Lansing in early 18, if I'm correct, Steve. We had traveled, late 17, early 18, we traveled down to Lansing and had meetings with them where they instructed us to reapply, scaling back the projects a little bit more and being a little bit more precise in what we were asking for. So we focused in more directly on the Envoy operation to upgrade their facilities, which incorporated 664, 665, and then some improvements to Hangar 661, in which case we had several discussions with the ADO, and we finally hammered out the application, and they submitted it, or we submitted it, and then they approved us for a 5-year cycle, which was back in 2018 that we were approved. Now, as the administrator said, that we were approved and we just were kind of in, what would we say, a holding pattern, waiting for the FAA to come in with funding for this project. And they just recently, and it was an extreme surprise, and the circumstance was not as we would have had initially planned, but they came in and told us in a very expedient fashion we had to move forward with estimates and get approval of this grant so they could get it in play under the 2019 grant cycle.
Why such a small window of getting back to them?
The purpose that I've been told by the FAA is their fiscal year runs October to September, and this is September is the last part of their fiscal year, and they had gone through all their AIP, which is Airport Improvement Program grants, the discretionary grants, and the MAP grants, and they reviewed all of the asks, and they came back with a value of the $1,099,000 available for us, and they said that's what we will award you for this grant, because we have the money in account so that you can proceed forward with at least this stage of Hangar 665.
So what I'm hearing is that we accept the money for the engineering of this expansion for 665. We are in essence committing to the whole grant program.
We would be committing, and I had discussions with the FAA today, we would be committing at least at this stage to following through with expanding Hangar 665.
13 million.
13 million. The one aspect of this is
Ours being 10% of it.
that I feel we need to look at is the fact that in the event that we proceed with this, it's not necessarily that we are investing this kind of money for a particular industry or a particular tenant. This would be a $13 million investment, 10 cents on the dollar, for Marquette County. In the event that Envoy and any airline that I've seen over the course of my career, airlines are very evasive with committing to stuff. But in the event Envoy, with the investment in the hangar, we would not, if they were to not sign anything and they were to leave, we still have a hangar that is able to meet future needs as we would develop Sawyer.
Just two quick questions and then one comment, and I'm going to be done. The federal government reneged on $690,000 on a snow brush. Where are we at on that?
We
Just
have
briefly.
it's going through the process of the PFC application where it'll be approved, and then we'll be able to tap into the PFC fund to pay for that.
So we haven't collected anything yet.
It's collected, but they have not made the official approval for the
Okay.
amendment.
And am I clear that we're gonna ask for money is 1.2 million just for design, for the engineering firm?
That is, yes, that is correct. It is.
Without putting a shovel in the ground, it's 1.2 million. Who's the engineering firm?
It's Mead and Hunt.
And that's the same, let me finish, please. And that's the same company that we have a snow brush that we had to write 690 out of the general fund to take care of, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, last comment. I think until we get the snow brush issue resolved, I'm not interested in hearing a whole lot more on this issue. Thank you, though.
I should have stayed as an engineer, I was gonna say, rather than an attorney.
Well,
But those
no,
kind of rates. No, I have a huge problem with this because it's a big commitment. I mean, $13 million project, and we're at roughly 10% if the state, I see those numbers come up to about 5% for the state and 5% for us for the engineering part. So we don't know the state's gonna contribute, so we're really on the hook for 10% potentially. So you're talking about $1.5 million is our share, right? 1.3 million for the $13 million project.
The state indicated, again, I don't want to use the term because I know that we verbally to Dwayne that the money is in the budget for this phase of the project. So that's it. That's
Which
all.
phase? You mean the engineering phase?
This first phase.
Oh, yeah, well, I'm not worried about that as much as I am about the
Going
13
forward.
million.
Correct.
Right, I mean, I don't want to be on the hook for $1.3 million, and I certainly don't want to make a knee-jerk decision where it's, what is it, the 3rd today? September 3rd today? And they want us to accept this by September 11th? I know why they're doing it, because I worked for the federal government for 8 years, and I know what happens at the end of the year with end-of-the-year money.
Snow brush.
They ended up with end-of-the-year money, and they want to spend it, and they need to spend it, and that's what they did. They threw it out at you. But I wouldn't do that. I mean, we can't make these kinds of decisions. I mean, a decision that could impact us for $1.5 million that we want to make in a couple of days, I would never vote for such a thing.
No.
Oh, one more thing, if I could. I don't understand this. I'm a little bit concerned. This is one concern I had sitting listening to this, is that I kind of heard that as these airlines transition to other aircraft, they're not going to fit in the hangars. First of all, I find that alarming, and if that's true, we needed to know that a long time ago. So if we're going to be having problems housing our aircraft going forward, and it's an imminent problem, we needed to know that, and we need to know that. I find it hard to believe when the Air Force, I remember not too many years ago watching those B-52s fly by and the KC-135s fly by, and they were pretty big. So I find it hard to believe that the aircraft that Envoy's flying doesn't fit in those hangars, but maybe, I don't know. It is what it is, I guess.
No, it's the tail height on the new ones coming forward. That's the problem. They had a tail, they had a special door on, say, for example, Gear 664, specific just to the tail for the B-52s and those larger ones. That's why you can get one to the hangar right now.
Well, they were pulling them in, a lot of times B-52s and the KC-135s, they weren't pulling the tail fins in, right? They were only pulling the fuselage in.
Yes, that's correct.
And the doors went around them. Can't they do that again or not?
I would imagine there could be engineered something on that line.
Just a little summary, I mean, we got ongoing needs in running the airport. A month or two ago, we were here talking to us about things that needed to be done with the terminal, for example. And you're talking about using PFC money. We need to concentrate on running that airport and having a first-class airport out there. And what we can do with economic development is wonderful, but when we start getting in, talking about $13 million and being the sole partner on these kinds of things, we can't do it. I mean, it's ludicrous as far as I'm concerned. So that's my thoughts on it.
Well, if I size this up, if we decide we're not going to do this, we've been trying for many years now to become a Class 3 airport. And one of the reasons we wanted to be that was because then we could get the bigger planes flying in here. And, we know that, American or Envoy is planning on upgrading their fleet. Currently, most of their planes flying out of here are almost full, or at capacity. And, of course, they can make more money if they can fly a bigger plane out of here, which will fly in here. We also know that, we're not the only repair facility for Envoy, but that it seems that every time they have a real big problem, not just a standard problem, those planes get referred here to Sawyer. And we know this, Envoy was getting concerned because they were losing a lot of personnel out of Sawyer for people who were transferring to higher paying jobs in bigger cities where the cost of living is a little higher, but people are ruined. I have been told that within the past 2 months, Envoy came here and without any bargaining, without any demands by the union or anything else, they gave everybody working out at Sawyer a 3.5% raise, unasked for. Now, to me, that tells me, one, that indicates the value of their putting on their workforce out there at Sawyer. A couple of years ago, they asked us if we would go 50-50 with them on putting the new LED lights into their facility out there. We turned them down on that. Well, they went ahead and did that themselves. Another sign that they like this place. They hire a lot of people here. It's a valuable resource to that company. So, you know, would we take a risk? Yes. But if we don't take the risk, it's a certainty that once they're not flying the smaller planes, they're flying and repairing and working on out there, they're gone. They're gone. And then how many people are working out there now? 180, 190, something like that?
Over 200.
Over 200. Those jobs are gone. So it's a hard choice. It's a real hard choice.
Mr. Chair?
They've had for 20 years, what, 50 cents a square foot? I think Marquette County has done a pretty good job for them, right?
I don't doubt that.
So
I don't doubt that.
What we're saying is it's time that they partner with a project like this if there's any chance that it could happen. And without some partners in it, don't make any financial sense for Marquette County.
Yeah, well, what I'm saying, if we want them to partner with them, let's sit down and have that discussion.
When's that lease up?
They're bringing it to us for consideration without ever talking to them. That's what this is. They haven't been talked to, we just.
Yeah, I don't think Envoy brought this. I think it was the staff thing because Maps flipped it out to them. Right?
So they haven't even been talked to yet.
Mr.
We're
Chair?
just giving our individual feelings about this kind of money here tonight, so.
Mr. Chair, I believe that county administrator and our manager at the airport would like to meet one more time to negotiate with them and let them know what the county board feelings are. Are you willing to go back there?
Well, of course, that's, you know, you can turn it down at another meeting. I heard the commissioner's comment, that's why we're here tonight, to express that. It's up to the board if they are willing to meet again. we're trying to pull some things together. I'm not gonna mislead you and tell you in a week that we're gonna get you further than what we have today, without question. And, we're trying to make some things, we have meetings this week, both of us do. I'm gonna be in Lansing, so I have another meeting that I'm gonna be doing while I'm in Lansing. On top of this, it's a board decision. We made a recommendation to at least consider a special meeting if that's all possible. We understand it and don't disagree with all the points made tonight. We are here, and that's why we're saying we're not recommending you act on it tonight, because there's a lot of unknown factors that we can't assure you with, that we would like to normally come with more detail, more assurances, and then given, as noted, from Vice Chair Deloach about the previous thing with the snow room, and that's another thing that just happened 2 weeks ago that we had to bring you, and obviously we know that's a concern too. And I heard Commissioner Alholm ask a question about, I'll give you an estimate on the time remaining on the current agreements, about, estimate 2 years.
Boy.
It's give or take a little, so.
I think we need to have that special meeting. I think it would be a little short-sighted to make a decision when we don't have more information. It's an important project. Envoy is an important employer in business there, and I would move to have a special meeting to review this further
I support
prior to
that.
the deadline.
Well, my motion is for them to go back and
Oh, I didn't know you made
negotiate.
a motion.
Was that a motion?
Yes, it was. And what I'm trying to say is for them to get the other partners that wanted us to work with them to get their skin in the game and make them also be part of this project, so.
So you're saying we're gonna have a special meeting, but I guess that's fine. But I guess if there isn't any partners that are willing to step up with substantial money, I can tell you what my vote is tonight, NO.
Well, I agree with you. That's why I want them to go back one more time, and when they come back to us, then we'll tell them yes or no.
So we're in the middle of two motions. We got one motion to go meet with Envoy and partner up. We have another motion to go with a special meeting.
I haven't heard a support on it.
No,
We don't have a support on it.
We also didn't.
I'll support Commissioner DePietro's motion.
To go meet with
You
Envoy.
want to state it again, John?
That we send our negotiators back to work with Envoy and whoever else is involved, and for them to come back to us with what they were able to accomplish or not accomplish at our next special meeting, and we'll tell them yes or no.
The only problem with that is that it sounds like you want them to go back and talk to them. I don't understand Envoy's been involved in this whole discussion yet. Have they?
We have discussed it very, very lightly in relation to a partnership with them. Up until just recently, we were fully believing that the state was going to come in and carry their 5% of the grant, just like they always have in the past. It wasn't until just recently that they deemed that they are not necessarily financially able to provide that local match or their 5% match.
Okay, we have a motion and a support. All in favor, say aye.
No.
No.
Aye. That's just to go meet with Envoy, right? Aye.
And I move to have a special meeting to discuss this further with the emphasis on funding.
Support.
Right. And I'm gonna vote against that just because I don't think we have enough, and I think we're rushing it, and we're just rushing. I don't think we have enough time, so I don't think a special meeting next week's gonna solve this important issue.
Well, if we don't have a special meeting, we won't meet until after the deadline.
I understand.
Takes place.
We have a motion and support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Nay. Motion defeated. So I guess, if you come together with your partners and all the money, I guess,
I'm available if things change, but I just don't see it, it doesn't look good. And we shouldn't let the federal government wag us like a dog, you know what I mean? That's,
next, Board of Canvassers appointments. Any comment on that, Linda?
You'll notice in front of you, as you've seen Fran tonight, she is retiring after 33 years, leaving her Democratic seat vacant. So I did reach out to the parties because we are going to have a vacancy there. We also, Doreen Tacklow, who's currently a Republican, her term is up. So what I need to do is ask the board for the Democratic Party, which their nomination was Carol Capuccio, and the Republican Party has nominated by phone Doreen Tacklow to serve another term. So I need, I guess, all of you to agree with that.
I would move that we appoint Carol Capuccio and Doreen Tackolo to the Board of Canvassers.
Support.
Motion and support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next, we have appointments to the Brownfield Ann Giroux until she becomes financial officer, and Lance Lindbergh. Motion to consider.
So moved. For both of them.
Support.
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public comment? Any public comment? Commissioner's comment, I guess I'd like to thank Mr. Adamini for his work with the Labor Day deal in Marquette County, also Commissioner Road, which is the trailer and chairs. Thank you. It was an interesting day, and had nice music from Mr. Adamini for the festivities at the Labor Day.
I appreciate your sentiments, but no thanks are necessary. I love doing that, and I'm just so glad that you like to join me in doing that kind of thing.
It was very nice. I guess Commissioner DePietro and myself met with the Director of UPCAP concerning meal services in Marquette and Alger County, and Mr. DePietro is now a member of the ANCAD board. He's going to follow up with some information for them, and also the city of Marquette for their meals. We've been working on that for the last year, so thanks, John, for your work.
You bet, my pleasure. Commissioner comment time?
You have something?
Yes. Start off with, I'd like to, once again, congratulate Marquette County Prosecuting Attorney Matt Weesey for being elected to President-elect of the Board of Directors of the Prosecuting Attorney Association of Michigan, which I believe he'll take office in January 2020 through December 2020. Is that correct?
August 2020 to August 2021, assuming the election goes my way next year.
Okay, very good. That's your story. He's on record for that. Also, like I say, the rest of it was very enjoyable being in Ishpeming for the Labor Day parade, and that's one of the things I wanted to really thank Vice Chairman Joe DeRoche for having a trailer set up for us. He had the chairs on the trailer. He had his son Willie DeRoche check everything out, repaired a couple of items, electrical items that had to be addressed before he would let us go on the highway. And he did an excellent job. We couldn't thank him enough. Also, as far as I know Commissioner Adamini said he doesn't like to be thanked for us using his truck, but anyways, we did have to thank him for what he did as far as mounting he put 6 huge speakers on top of his truck and played over 40 Union songs going through the parade route, which many of the people got up and waved and clapped for the Union songs, because a lot of them they hadn't heard before, and they were very happy to hear it. And one of the other things that I had heard from residents of Negaunee, that they could hear the music from Ishpeming because Commissioner Adamini had cranked up the volumes on there, and it echoed right east of Ishpeming to Negaunee, so I wanted to thank you very much for that. And one other thank you goes to Jesse Carlson. He was our chauffeur during the parade, driving Commissioner Adamini's truck, so thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
You now have
Other
the floor.
commissioner comments?
Just one small correction, it was 8 speakers, John, not 6.
It was my story.
Any public comment? Public comment? Staff comments? Meeting is adjourned.